One of our men interfered. Speared him through the leg before I could finish him.
Why is he still alive?
It wouldn't have been clean.
Most people think Tywin Lannister was a great warrior. He wasn't. If you actually go back and count the battles Tywin personally won with his sword in hand, the number is shockingly small. He wasn't the best fighter in Westeros. He wasn't even close. Jaime was better. The Mountain was scarier. Robb Stark outgeneraled him on the field every single time they met. Yet Tywin won. He won every war he was ever in. He won wars he didn't even fight in. He won wars before anyone realized a war was happening. How? That's the part nobody talks about. The truth is, Tywin Lannister figured out something the entire continent of Westeros never quite understood. Battles aren't actually won on battlefields. They're won in quiet rooms, weeks before, with a letter, a song, or a marriage contract. By the time the swords come out, the fight is already decided. The men dying on the field are just there to confirm the result. Once you really look at the 4 moves that defined his entire life, you start to realize something deeply uncomfortable about power itself. Tywin's methods weren't fantasy. They're how real history works. That's where this gets disturbing. Here's the question nobody seems to ask. If Tywin was so brilliant, why don't we ever actually see him being brilliant on screen the way we see other commanders? Robb has his big victories shown. Stannis has Blackwater. Daenerys has her dragons. But Tywin is almost always somewhere else when the important thing happens. He's at a table. He's reading a letter. He's gutting a deer. He's not in the room where the killing happens. For a long time I thought that was a writing flaw. Like the show just didn't have the budget to show his battles. Then I realized, no, that's the entire point. That is the character. Tywin is never in the room where the killing happens because the killing is the last step of a plan he set in motion months ago. The killing is the receipt. The killing is the proof that the real work, the invisible work, has already succeeded. So the mystery isn't, how does Tywin win battles? The mystery is, what is he actually doing in all those quiet scenes while everyone else is bleeding? What's in those letters? What's he negotiating? Who's he buying? Once you understand that, 4 moments in his life suddenly look completely different. Starting with the one that built his entire reputation, when he was barely 20 years old.
Lannisters don't act like fools.
To understand Tywin, you have to understand his father. Lord Tytos Lannister was a kind man, generous, warm. He laughed easily and forgave debts and gave second chances. In Westeros, that kind of man gets eaten alive. His own vassals openly mocked him. They borrowed money and never paid it back. One lord's wife wore a necklace of Lannister gold to court, gold she'd stolen, and laughed about it. The most powerful house in Westeros was being treated like a joke. Young Tywin watched all of it. Every humiliation, every smirk, every time his father smiled and let it go. Somewhere in there, a switch flipped in him that never flipped back. 2 of those mocking vassals, House Reyne of Castamere and House Tarbeck, eventually decided to stop pretending and just openly rebel. The lion was wounded. They thought it was time to take the kill. They had no idea what they'd just done. Tywin wasn't his father. Tywin had been waiting for this, praying for this, since he was a boy. He needed someone to rebel. He needed an example. What he did to House Reyne wasn't just a military response. It was a message designed to last 40 years. A message so terrifying that, decades later, kings would still freeze when they heard the first notes of a certain song. Here's what he actually did. Tywin marched on the Tarbecks first and erased them in a single afternoon, burned their hall, killed their line, hung their bodies from the gates of Casterly Rock and left them there for the whole summer to rot, so every single person who walked past would remember. Then he rode for Castamere. The Reynes panicked and did what seemed smart at the time. They retreated into the mines beneath their own castle. Thousands of them. Soldiers, lords, women, children. Deep underground where no army could follow. They sent a message offering surrender terms. Tywin didn't even respond. He wasn't going in. He sealed every entrance to the mines with stone. Then, calmly, he diverted a nearby river straight into the mountain. For one entire night, the Lannister soldiers above ground could hear what was happening below them. Faint screaming, then quieter screaming, then nothing at all. By morning, House Reyne, one of the wealthiest families in Westeros, simply didn't exist anymore. Drowned in the dark, in the place they thought was their safest hiding spot. Here's the part that turned a massacre into a legend. Someone wrote a song about it. The Rains of Castamere, a beautiful, haunting little tune. Tywin realized something most warlords never figure out. A song travels faster than an army. A song doesn't need to be paid. A song never gets tired. A song will outlive every man who ever heard it. From that day forward, Tywin Lannister almost never had to threaten anyone again. He didn't need to. The song did it for him. Years later, a lord named Farman started getting difficult, refusing orders, acting too independent. Tywin didn't send soldiers. He didn't send a letter. He sent a single musician with a lute. One man, one instrument, walking up the road to Farman's castle, completely alone. The musician walked into Lord Farman's hall, and he just started playing. That was it. That was the whole threat. No army, no letter, no raised voice. Just one man, plucking a tune in a stone hall, and Lord Farman fell in line immediately. He understood exactly what those notes meant. Think about how terrifying that actually is. The horror of a real army is loud. It's expensive. It's blood and steel and burning villages. You can see it coming. You can hear it from miles away. You have time to react. Tywin's horror was the opposite of all that. Tywin's horror was quiet. It was cheap. It was one guy with a stringed instrument standing in your dining hall. By the time you heard the first note, you'd already lost. The war was over before you even realized you were in one. That's the most terrifying thing about Tywin Lannister, and almost nobody talks about it. This is where the pattern reveals itself. Once you see the Castamere blueprint, win without the army, you start seeing it everywhere in Tywin's life. Robert's rebellion? He waited until the war was mathematically decided, then walked into King's Landing under a flag of friendship and sacked it from the inside. He never risked a single soldier. The Battle of the Blackwater? He didn't save the city with brilliant tactics. He saved it with a marriage contract signed weeks earlier, turning the entire Tyrell army into his sword. Stannis didn't lose to a general. He lost to a wedding invitation. The Red Wedding is where Tywin crossed a line that even his own world didn't think could be crossed. Robb Stark was beating him. Genuinely. Battle after battle. Tywin understood he could not win this war with steel. So he reached for something older than steel. In Westeros, there's a sacred custom called guest right. The moment a host gives a guest bread and salt under his roof, neither can harm the other. It's not a law. It's older than law. It's a religious protection, honored for thousands of years, by every house, in every kingdom, even between mortal enemies. To break guest right is to spit in the face of the gods themselves. Tywin broke it without blinking. He didn't even have to be in the room to do it. He found the two men sitting closest to Robb Stark, Walder Frey, humiliated, petty, hungry for revenge over a broken marriage pact. Rose Bolton, quietly ambitious, tired of standing in a Stark's shadow. Tywin never met them in person. He never even raised his voice. He just sent letters. Quiet ravens flying between castles in the dark, while everyone else was watching the battlefield. He offered Frey forgiveness. He offered Bolton the North. He offered them both something more valuable than gold, the protection of House Lannister, to shield them from what every god in Westeros would demand as punishment. Robb walked into the twins thinking he was attending his uncle's wedding. He'd been given bread and salt. He believed, on the deepest possible level, that he was safe. He was the young wolf. He was undefeated. He was protected by laws older than the throne itself. Then the musician started playing a song he should have recognized. By the time he understood what those notes meant, the doors were already barred. His mother's throat was already cut. His wife was already dead. Tywin Lannister, hundreds of miles away, in a quiet room, holding a quill, had just won a war by bypassing the battlefield, the law, and the gods all at once, without ever drawing a sword, without ever leaving his chair. Here's where the story turns on him. Tywin spent his entire life teaching one lesson. That family is a weapon, that love is leverage, that everything and everyone is a piece on a board. He taught it to his enemies. He taught it to his bannermen. He taught it to all of Westeros. He taught it, most thoroughly, to his own children. He taught Cersei that affection is something you use. He taught Jaime that duty matters more than feeling. He taught Tyrion, the son he despised, the son he humiliated his entire life, the son he tried to have executed for a crime he didn't commit. Tyrion learned the lesson best of all. Tyrion learned that when someone has all the power and feels none of the love, the only move left is the one nobody sees coming. So on a quiet night, in a quiet room, the most feared man in Westeros, the man who drowned a house in a mine, who sacked a capital, who orchestrated the Red Wedding from hundreds of miles away, only to die on a toilet, shot mid-sentence by his own son, with a crossbow. Look at that scene carefully and you'll notice something almost unbearable. Tyrion didn't beat his father on a battlefield. He didn't raise an army. He didn't even raise his voice. He walked into a quiet room with a single weapon and ended the conversation before Tywin realized a conversation was happening. Tywin Lannister lost his final battle exactly the way he won every other one, in a quiet room, with no swords drawn, before he even knew the fight had begun.